The ancient moon of Kalara hung in space like a jewel made of silver and blue. Its surface was covered with the massive buildings of the Galactic Defense Academy. Today was special. Today was the day when new cadets would meet the war beasts. Marcus Chen stood with the other cadets in the great arena. The building was so big that clouds formed near the ceiling. Around him, representatives from dozens of alien species waited for the ceremony to begin. Marcus felt small among them. To his left stood Crix, an Altarian with bright golden feathers that caught the light. Altarians could fly faster than most spacecraft and had eyesight so sharp they could spot a coin from orbit. Crix had already won 3 flying competitions at the Academy. On his right was Thok, a Gorvanian who looked like he was carved from gray stone. Gorvanians were so strong they could punch through steel walls. Thok was 8 feet tall and his skin was as hard as rock. He had never lost a fight. Behind Marcus, Lisa swayed gently in the way of her people. The Silithian looked like she was made of pure energy wrapped in a thin body. Her kind could control electricity and light with their minds. She had already learned to make herself invisible. Marcus was just human. Humans had been part of the Galactic Alliance for only 100 years. Most other species still thought humans were weak and primitive. They called Earth a baby world and humans the children. At the Academy, Marcus had earned the nickname Trouble Alpha. He got this name because he never followed the rules exactly. When teachers said to do something one way, Marcus would find 3 other ways to do it. Some of these ways worked better than the original method. This made his instructors both proud and frustrated. Commandant Zelix walked to the center of the arena. She was a Zilithian and her crystal skin sparkled in the light. When she spoke, her voice echoed through the huge space. "Cadets," she said, "today you will meet the Vorthak war beasts. These creatures have fought alongside our greatest warriors for thousands of years. They are not pets. They are not tools. They are partners." Marcus had studied the Vorthak in his classes. The beasts were 12 feet tall and looked like a mix between a giant wolf and a dragon. They had scales that changed color based on their feelings. More important, they were as smart as any sentient being in the galaxy. The Vorthak choose their own partners. Commandant Zelix continued, "They will smell each of you. They will look into your hearts and minds. Most of you will not be chosen. Only 1 cadet in 50 ever bonds with a war beast. The rest will serve in support roles, which are equally important to our cause." A massive gate opened at one end of the arena. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the space. Marcus felt his heart beating faster. The first Vorthak emerged from the darkness. Its name was Shadowmaw, and it was the largest of the 3 beasts that lived at the Academy. Its scales were deep purple, almost black. Its eyes glowed golden in the arena lights. Shadowmaw was followed by 2 other beasts. Stormclaw had scales that shifted between blue and silver. Lightning seemed to dance along its skin. The third beast, Ironhide, was covered in scales that looked like polished metal. The 3 Vorthak walked to the center of the arena. They looked at the line of cadets with ancient, intelligent eyes. Marcus felt like they could see right through him. "The ceremony will now begin," announced Commandant Zelix. "Remain at attention. Do not move unless instructed. The beasts will approach you when they are ready." Shadowmaw stepped forward first. The massive creature moved with surprising grace for something so large. Its claws clicked on the arena floor as it approached the line of cadets. The beast began at the far end of the line, where the Altarian cadet stood. Marcus watched as Shadowmaw lowered its great head toward each cadet. Its nostrils flared as it breathed in their scent. The first cadet was Velox, the fastest flyer in their class. Shadowmaw spent several seconds examining him. The beast's scales shifted from purple to a lighter blue, showing interest. But after a moment, Shadowmaw moved on. The same thing happened with the next 3 Altarians. The beast showed interest but did not choose any of them. Shadowmaw moved to the Gorvanian section. Thok stood straighter as the beast approached. The war beast had to look up slightly to meet Thok's eyes. For a moment, Marcus thought this might be the match. Shadowmaw's scales turned a warm orange color. But again, the beast moved on. The pattern continued with the Silithians, the Zathari, the Krillian traders, and all the other species. Some cadets clearly excited the beast more than others. With a few, Shadowmaw's scales turned bright colors and it spent extra time examining them, but it chose none of them. Marcus began to feel nervous as Shadowmaw got closer to his section. Humans were at the end of the line, as they usually were. Being the newest member species meant they got the least important positions at most ceremonies. Finally, Shadow Maw reached the human section. There were only 5 human cadets in this year's class. The beast examined the first 4 quickly. Its scales stayed the same dark purple, showing no special interest. Then Shadow Maw reached Marcus. The massive head lowered toward him. Marcus could feel the beast's warm breath on his face. Up close, he could see that the golden eyes held an intelligence that was both alien and familiar. Shadow Maw breathed in deeply, taking in Marcus's scent. The beast's scales began to change. The dark purple lightened to a soft blue, then shifted to green, then to a warm amber color. Marcus had studied enough about Vorthak to know that amber meant deep interest, almost excitement. He tried to stay calm, but his heart was racing. The beast circled around him. This had not happened with any other cadet. Shadow Maw walked completely around Marcus, examining him from every angle. The amber color of its scales grew brighter. Other cadets began to whisper. Even Commandant Zelix looked surprised. In all the selection ceremonies she had overseen, she had never seen a Vorthak show this much interest in a single cadet. Shadow Maw completed its circle and came back to stand directly in front of Marcus. The beast looked down at him with those ancient golden eyes. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Then Shadow Maw sat down. The massive creature lowered its bulk to the arena floor with a sound like thunder. It sat directly in front of Marcus, its great head level with the human's chest. The arena went completely silent. Even the whispers stopped. Marcus stared at the war beast in shock. He had hoped to be chosen, but he had never really believed it would happen. He was just a human from a small colony world. He was not the strongest or the fastest or the smartest cadet in his class, but Shadow Maw had chosen him. Commandant Zelix's voice broke the silence. "The bond is formed," she announced, though her voice showed her own surprise. "Cadet Chen and Shadow Maw are now partners." The arena erupted in noise. Some aliens cheered, but others sounded confused or even angry. Marcus heard several voices demanding to know how this could have happened. He did not care about the noise. He was looking into Shadow Maw's golden eyes, and he could feel something new in his mind. It was like a warm presence, ancient and wise and patient. The war beast had chosen him. Now Marcus had to prove he was worthy of that choice. The moment Shadow Maw sat in front of Marcus, something incredible happened. A warm feeling spread through Marcus's mind, like sunlight breaking through clouds. It was not his own feeling. It was coming from the war beast. The psychic bond formed instantly. Marcus gasped as new sensations flooded his brain. Through Shadow Maw's senses, he could suddenly detect things no human was meant to feel. He could sense the electrical fields generated by every living being in the arena. He could feel the emotional energy radiating from the shocked crowd. The world became much more complex. Colors seemed brighter and had meanings he had never known existed. He could smell things that had no human names. Most overwhelming of all, he could feel the deep currents of life energy that flowed through everything around him. But the connection worked both ways. Shadow Maw was experiencing human thoughts and feelings for the first time. The beast felt Marcus's determination, that strange human ability to keep going even when logic said to give up. It felt the human concept of improvisation, the willingness to try new things when old methods failed. Most surprising to Shadow Maw was something it had never encountered in any other species. Humans had this strange drive to protect those who could not protect themselves, even when it meant risking their own lives. This concept was so alien to most galactic species that there was no word for it in the common tongue. The psychic connection stabilized after a few moments. Marcus found he could think clearly again. Though he was still aware of Shadow Maw's presence in his mind, the war beast's thoughts felt ancient and patient, like a deep well of wisdom. Around them, the arena had exploded into chaos. Alien dignitaries were standing and shouting in a dozen different languages. Many sounded angry or confused. "This cannot be correct," shouted Ambassador Vrex, a tall Altarian with silver feathers. "The human species has barely learned to leave their home system. How can one of them be chosen by a Vorthak?" "I agree," rumbled General Kortak, a massive Gorvanian. "Our people have bonded with war beasts for centuries. We understand honor and strength. These humans are weak creatures who fight with tricks instead of courage." Commandant Zelix raised her hand for silence, but the arguing continued. Marcus could see that even she looked uncertain. The crystal patterns on her skin were shifting in ways that showed confusion and concern. Dr. Sarah Okafor, the only other human adult at the academy, pushed through the crowd. She was a xenobiologist who had come to study how different species interacted. Now she stood protectively near Marcus. "The bond has been made according to ancient law," Dr. Okafor said firmly. "No one has the right to question the choice of a Vorthak. This has been the way for thousands of years. But surely there must be some mistake," insisted Counselor Neith, a Silithian whose energy field was crackling with agitation. "The Vorthak are the most intelligent creatures in the galaxy. They do not make errors, so what did this one see in a human that we cannot?" Marcus felt Shadowmaw's amusement through their bond. The war beast was not concerned by the controversy. It knew exactly why it had chosen Marcus, even if it could not easily explain it to others. The other two Vorthak, Stormclaw and Ironhide, had completed their own selections. Stormclaw had chosen Crix, the golden-feathered Altarian pilot. Ironhide had bonded with a young Zathari, whose scales could change color to match any environment. But all attention remained focused on Marcus and Shadowmaw. The human war-beast pairing was the most shocking thing that had happened at the Academy in decades. Over the following days, Marcus found himself more isolated than ever. Even cadets who had been friendly before now treated him with suspicion. Some thought he had somehow cheated or tricked Shadowmaw into choosing him. Others believed the bond was a mistake that would soon be corrected. The instructors were no better. Most tried to be professional, but Marcus could see the doubt in their eyes. How could they train someone whose very presence challenged everything they thought they knew about war-beast selection? Only a few people supported Marcus. Dr. Okafor continued to defend the bond when others questioned it. Crix, despite being Altarian, seemed genuinely curious about what Shadowmaw had seen in Marcus. And surprisingly, Lissa the Silithian admitted that she could sense something different about Marcus's energy patterns, though she could not explain what. The first training sessions were disasters. Marcus struggled to coordinate with Shadowmaw's immense power. The beast was patient, but Marcus could feel its frustration through their bond. They were supposed to move as one unit. But Marcus's human limitations made this almost impossible. Other bonded pairs demonstrated abilities that seemed like magic. Crix and Stormclaw could fly at speeds that broke the sound barrier, while performing maneuvers that defied physics. The Zathari Cadet and Ironhide could become completely invisible, and move without making any sound at all. Marcus and Shadowmaw crashed into training obstacles, mistimed their movements, and failed to complete even basic exercises. After each session, Marcus could hear other cadets whispering about how the human was proving he did not deserve his war beast. But Shadowmaw never showed regret about its choice. Through their bond, Marcus could feel the beast's certainty that it had chosen correctly. The war beast was waiting for something, though Marcus could not understand what. 3 weeks into training, Marcus was called to Commandant Zelix's office. The crystal woman looked tired and her skin pattern showed stress. "Cadet Chen," she said, "I have received formal complaints from several member worlds about your bonding with Shadowmaw. They are demanding a review of the selection process." Marcus felt his heart sink. "Are you going to separate us, Commandant?" Zelix was quiet for a long moment. "The law is clear. No one may break a bond that has been properly formed, but..." She paused. "I need you to understand the pressure I am under. Many important people believe this bonding was an error. They are watching every training session, waiting for proof that you and Shadowmaw are incompatible." "We are not incompatible," Marcus said quietly. "We just need more time to learn how to work together." "Time may be something you do not have," Zelix warned. "If you cannot demonstrate significant improvement soon, there may be calls for more drastic measures. Some are already suggesting that Shadowmaw has been somehow damaged by bonding with a human." This thought horrified Marcus. The idea that his limitations might harm Shadowmaw was worse than any personal failure. That night, Marcus sat with Shadowmaw in the beast's quarters. The war beast's scales showed a calm blue color, but Marcus could feel its concern through their bond. "I do not want to hurt you," Marcus said aloud. "Maybe they are right. Maybe you made a mistake choosing me." Shadowmaw's response came not in words but in feelings and images. The beast showed Marcus flashes of memory from other warriors it had known. Great heroes from a dozen species, all of them brave and skilled. But they had all thought in similar ways. They followed the rules of combat that their species had developed over centuries. They were predictable even in their excellence. Shadowmaw had been waiting for something different, something that would surprise it. In Marcus, it had found a mind that worked unlike any other it had encountered. The beast believed that the challenges facing the galaxy would require new kinds of thinking. The old ways, no matter how perfect, might not be enough for what was coming. Marcus felt Shadowmaw's confidence in him, and it gave him strength. The war beast had not made a mistake. It had made a choice based on knowledge and wisdom far beyond what others could understand. Now Marcus had to prove that this choice was correct. Marcus threw himself into training with desperate determination. Every morning, he and Shadowmaw were the first pair on the practice field. Every evening, they were the last to leave. But progress came slowly, and the failures were public. The obstacle course was designed for bonded pairs to navigate together. Other teams flowed through it like water, their movements perfectly synchronized. Crix and Stormclaw could complete the entire course in under 2 minutes, flying through the air and around barriers with impossible grace. Marcus and Shadowmaw took 15 minutes on their best attempt. They crashed into walls, mistimed jumps, and struggled to communicate during complex maneuvers. Each failure brought more whispers from watching cadets and instructors. Perhaps the humans should consider a transfer to engineering, Marcus overheard one instructor say to another. At least there he might be useful. The combat simulations were even worse. The training used holographic enemies that required both rider and beast to work as a perfect team. Other pairs could take down multiple targets in seconds, their attacks flowing seamlessly from one to the next. Marcus and Shadowmaw managed to defeat individual opponents, but they could not handle groups. Their timing was off, their coordination poor. More than once they accidentally got in each other's way and lost fights they should have won easily. Dr. Okafor tried to encourage Marcus during their weekly meetings. "You are learning faster than any human has ever learned these skills," she reminded him. "Remember, other species have been training for this their entire lives. You have had only weeks." But Marcus knew that excuses would not be enough. The political pressure on Commandant Zelix was growing stronger every day. Representatives from major worlds were calling for investigations into the bonding process. Some were even suggesting that humans should be removed from the War Beast program entirely. The worst part was that Marcus could feel Shadowmaw's frustration through their bond. The ancient War Beast had expected difficulties, but not this many. Sometimes Marcus sensed that Shadowmaw was wondering if it had indeed made an error. During a particularly bad training session, Marcus lost his temper. They had failed the obstacle course for the 6th time that day, and he could hear other cadets laughing. "I cannot do this," he shouted, sliding down from Shadowmaw's back. Everyone was right. "I'm not supposed to be here." Shadowmaw's scales shifted to a deep red color, showing strong emotion. The War Beast projected feelings of disappointment, but not in Marcus. It was disappointed in itself for not finding a way to help its partner succeed. That night, Marcus could not sleep. He walked through the academy halls trying to think of a solution. How could he become the partner that Shadowmaw deserved? He found himself in the academy's library, reading about the history of War Beast bonding. Most of the records were thousands of years old, written in ancient languages that took time to translate. One story caught his attention. It told of a warrior named Vextar who had bonded with a war beast called Mindripper centuries ago. Like Marcus, Vextar had been considered an unusual choice. His species, the Karathi, were known for being scholars rather than fighters, but Vextar and Mindripper had developed new fighting techniques that combined the beast's physical power with the Karathi's superior intelligence. They had become one of the most successful pairs in galactic history. The key, according to the record, was that they had stopped trying to fight like everyone else. Instead, they had created their own style based on their unique strengths. Marcus felt a spark of hope. Maybe he and Shadowmaw were approaching this wrong. Maybe they should not be trying to copy other pairs. Maybe they should be finding their own way. The next morning, Marcus approached their instructor, Captain Vorth, a grizzled Zathari veteran. "Captain, I would like permission to modify our training program," Marcus said. Vorth's scales shifted to show skepticism. "The current program has worked for centuries, Cadet. What makes you think you can improve on it?" "I do not want to improve on it," Marcus replied. "I want to create something different. Something designed specifically for how Shadowmaw and I work together." The captain was quiet for a long moment. "You have 2 weeks," he finally said. "If you cannot show significant improvement by then, you will follow the standard program without deviation." Marcus spent the next few days studying everything he could about Shadowmaw's capabilities and his own strengths. Through their bond, he began to understand that the war beast was not just physically powerful. It was also incredibly intelligent and could process information much faster than any organic brain. Meanwhile, Marcus's human traits included adaptability, creative thinking, and the ability to make quick decisions with incomplete information. These were things that most other species found difficult. Instead of trying to move like an Altarian or fight like a Gorvanian, Marcus began developing tactics that used these combined abilities. They practiced scenarios where quick thinking mattered more than raw power or speed. Their first breakthrough came during a stealth exercise. Instead of trying to become invisible like other pairs, Marcus had Shadowmaw use its superior senses to map the entire training area. Then Marcus used his human pattern recognition skills to predict where guards would be at any given time. They completed the exercise faster than any other pair had ever managed. Not by being invisible, but by always being in the right place at the right time. Word of their success spread quickly through the academy. For the first time since the bonding ceremony, Marcus heard people talking about him with something other than skepticism, but not everyone was pleased. Some instructors complained that Marcus was not following proper techniques. Others argued that his methods would not work in real combat situations. Tricks and cleverness will only get you so far, warned Commander Thale, a proud Altarian officer. When you face a real enemy, you will need strength and skill, not human creativity. Marcus did not argue, but privately he disagreed. Human history was full of examples where creativity and unconventional thinking had defeated superior force. Maybe those lessons could apply to galactic warfare as well. As the 2-week deadline approached, Marcus and Shadowmaw prepared for their evaluation. They had developed several new techniques, but they were untested in formal assessment conditions. The test would be comprehensive, covering combat, navigation, stealth, and rescue operations. Other cadet pairs would also be evaluated, allowing direct comparison of their progress. Marcus felt nervous but also excited. For the first time since bonding with Shadowmaw, he felt like they had a real chance to succeed. They had stopped trying to be like everyone else and had started being themselves. The war beast's scales showed a calm blue color as they entered the evaluation arena. Through their bond, Marcus felt Shadowmaw's confidence. The ancient creature believed in their new approach. Commandant Zelix stood in the observation booth with instructors and several alien dignitaries who had come to witness Marcus's performance. The political implications of this test were enormous. "Begin the evaluation," Zelix announced. Marcus took a deep breath and guided Shadowmaw toward the first challenge. It was time to prove that being different could also mean being better. The test would determine not just whether Marcus could remain at the academy, but whether humans deserved a place in the War Beast program at all. Everything depended on the next few hours. As they approached the first obstacle, Marcus felt something he had not experienced since the bonding ceremony. He felt like he belonged here. He and Shadowmaw were ready to show the galaxy what they could do together. The emergency alarm shattered the morning quiet like a knife through glass. Marcus had been reviewing tactical manuals in the library when the sound echoed through every corridor of the academy. Red lights flashed and automated voices announced in a dozen languages that all personnel should report to their assigned stations immediately. Marcus ran toward the war beast quarters, his heart pounding. Emergency drills happened regularly, but this felt different. There was an urgency in the air that made his skin crawl. He found Shadowmaw already alert, the war beast scales shifting between deep purple and red. Through their bond, Marcus felt the creature's concern. This was not a drill. In the main briefing room, Commandant Zelix stood before a holographic display showing the outer edge of their star system. Her crystal skin was flashing in patterns that showed extreme stress. 3 hours ago, we lost contact with Research Station Kepler 7, she announced. Initial scans show the presence of devourer machines. The room went completely silent. Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. Every cadet knew about the devourers, the ancient machines that consumed all organic matter to fuel their endless expansion across the galaxy. They had not been seen in this sector for over 50 years. The holographic display zoomed in on the research station. It was a massive complex that housed over 10,000 civilian scientists and their families. The station conducted important research on new energy sources and medical treatments. Reconnaissance drones have confirmed at least 12 devourer ships, Zelix continued. They appear to be harvesting operations designed to strip all organic matter from the station and surrounding space. Captain Vorth stepped forward. "What are our orders, Commandant?" "The nearest military fleet is 4 days away," Zelix replied. "We cannot wait for them. The senior bonded pairs will deploy immediately to slow the Devourer advance and evacuate as many civilians as possible." Marcus watched as the Academy's most experienced teams prepared for deployment. These were the pairs that had already graduated, but remained at the Academy as instructors. They included some of the finest war beast riders in the galaxy. There were only 6 senior pairs available. Against 12 Devourer ships, the odds were not good, but they were the only hope the research station had. "All junior cadets will remain at the Academy," Zelix announced. "This includes recent bonding pairs. You are not ready for this level of combat." Marcus felt Shadow Maw's frustration through their bond. The war beast wanted to fight, but Marcus understood the logic. They had only recently learned to work together effectively. A battle against Devourers was no place for inexperienced teams. The senior pairs departed within the hour. Marcus and the other junior cadets were ordered to continue their training while monitoring communications from the battle zone. At first, the news was encouraging. The senior pairs had reached the research station and were engaging the Devourer ships. Early reports suggested they were holding their own, but as hours passed, the situation became desperate. The Devourers were adapting to every tactic the Academy teams used. These machines could learn and counter new strategies within minutes of encountering them. "Starhawk team is reporting heavy damage," came one transmission. "The Devourers have learned to predict our flight patterns." "Ironwing pair is requesting support," came another. "Enemy has adapted to our stealth capabilities." Marcus sat in the communication center with other cadets, listening to the increasingly desperate reports. Through their bond, he could feel Shadow Maw's growing agitation. The war beast understood that its fellow creatures were in danger. Dr. Okafor joined them in the communications center. Her face was pale as she listened to the reports. "The Devourers are learning too fast," she said quietly. "Every technique our people use, the machines figure out how to counter it." Marcus studied the tactical displays showing the battle. Something about the Devourer movements caught his attention. At first their attacks had seemed random, but now he could see a pattern emerging. "They are following a mathematical progression," he said suddenly. Dr. Okafor looked at him sharply. "What do you mean?" Marcus pointed at the display. "Look at their attack patterns. They start with basic responses, then modify them based on what our people do. But the modifications follow predictable mathematical rules." He had studied chaos theory as part of his engineering background. The Devourers were using advanced algorithms to adapt, but algorithms always had limits. If they are following mathematical patterns, then they can be confused by non-mathematical responses. Marcus continued. "Random, illogical actions that do not fit any predictable model." Dr. Okafor stared at him. "You mean deliberately irrational tactics?" "Exactly. Humans are good at that. We do things that make no sense all the time." Through his bond with Shadow Maw, Marcus felt a sudden surge of understanding. The war beast was seeing the same pattern he was. More than that, Shadow Maw was beginning to understand what made humans different from other species. Most galactic civilizations had developed logical, efficient methods of warfare over thousands of years. They followed rules and strategies that had been proven effective. This made them predictable to machines designed to learn and adapt. But humans were newer to galactic warfare. They had not yet learned to fight properly. They still used the chaotic, unpredictable methods that had served them on their homeworld. Another transmission crackled through the speakers. "This is Commander Varthek. We are down to 3 operational pairs. The Devourers have countered every strategy we have attempted. We need immediate reinforcement," Commandant Zelix's voice responded. "No reinforcements are available, Commander. Continue the evacuation as long as possible." "Commandant," Marcus said, standing up. "Shadow Maw and I request permission to deploy." The entire communications center turned to look at him. Several cadets laughed, thinking he was joking. "Absolutely not," Zelix replied firmly. "You are not ready for this level of combat. With respect, Commandant, I think we might be exactly what this situation needs." Marcus explained his theory about the Devourers' adaptation patterns and how human unpredictability might confuse their algorithms. As he spoke, he could see Zelix considering his words. "Even if your theory is correct," she said finally, "you have no experience in real combat. You could be killed within minutes." The senior teams are losing, Marcus replied. If we do nothing, they will all be killed anyway. At least let us try something different. Through his bond with Shadowmaw, Marcus felt the war beast's agreement. The ancient creature understood that sometimes survival required taking desperate chances. Dr. Okafor stepped forward. I support Cadet Chen's analysis. The Devourers are machines. They will continue to adapt until they can counter every conventional tactic. But they may not be able to process truly random behavior. Zelix was quiet for a long moment. Around the communications center, everyone held their breath. You have one chance, she said finally. If you deploy, you follow orders from Commander Varthek. You do not engage the enemy directly unless specifically instructed. Your primary mission is evacuation support. Marcus nodded, but he and Shadowmaw already knew they would not be able to stay out of the fighting. The situation was too desperate for half measures. As they prepared for departure, Marcus felt a mix of terror and excitement. This would be their first real battle against an enemy that had destroyed entire star systems. But through his bond with Shadowmaw, he also felt something else. For the first time since their bonding, he felt like they were about to do exactly what they were meant to do. The war beast's scales shifted to a bright gold color, showing anticipation and readiness. Shadowmaw had been waiting for this moment, when its human partner's strange way of thinking would finally prove its worth. They launched toward the research station, carrying with them the hope that sometimes the best way to fight a logical enemy was to stop being logical. The space around Research Station Kepler-7 was a chaos of light and destruction. Devourer ships moved through the darkness like mechanical sharks, their hull plating reflecting the explosions from the ongoing battle. The research station itself was partially dark, with several sections already consumed by the enemy machines. Marcus and Shadowmaw arrived at the edge of the combat zone to find only 2 Academy pairs still fighting. The others had been either destroyed or forced to retreat with critical damage. Commander Varthek's voice crackled through their communications. New arrival. Maintain distance and assist with civilian evacuation. Do not engage the enemy directly. They have adapted to all our combat techniques. Marcus could see what the commander meant. The remaining Academy pairs were trying to use hit-and-run tactics, but the Devourer ships were predicting their movements perfectly. Every attack was countered, every evasive maneuver anticipated. Through his bond with Shadowmaw, Marcus felt the war beast's analysis of the situation. The Devourers had learned to counter Altarian speed by calculating flight paths in advance. They matched Gorvanian strength with exponentially increasing force. They absorbed Silithian energy attacks to power their own weapons. Every logical tactical response had been tested and defeated. The machines were now simply grinding down the remaining defenders through superior numbers and adaptation. Shadowmaw, Marcus said quietly. Are you ready to try something completely insane? The war beast's scales shifted to bright gold, showing excitement and agreement. Through their bond, Marcus felt the creature's understanding. They were about to abandon every rule of proper combat. Marcus guided Shadowmaw toward a cluster of debris from destroyed ships. Instead of attacking the Devourer vessels directly, he began what appeared to be a series of random, suicidal maneuvers. He had Shadowmaw grab a piece of twisted metal and throw it at a Devourer ship, not as a weapon but simply to see what would happen. Then he flew directly toward another enemy vessel before suddenly changing direction for no apparent reason. The Devourers responded to these actions with confusion. Their adaptation algorithms tried to analyze Marcus's tactics and predict his next move. But there was no pattern to predict. He was acting without any logical plan. Marcus attacked when logic said to retreat. He defended positions that seemed worthless. He abandoned advantageous ground for no reason that any tactical computer could understand. Through their bond, Shadowmaw amplified Marcus's natural human unpredictability while adding its own ancient wisdom. The result was a fighting style that operated outside any framework the Devourers could process. The effect on the enemy machines was immediate. Ships that had been moving with perfect coordination began to hesitate. Their formation patterns started to break down as they tried to calculate responses to actions that made no mathematical sense. Commander Varthek's voice came through the communications. What are you doing out there? Your tactics make no sense. Exactly, Marcus replied, as he had Shadowmaw perform a maneuver that violated every principle of space combat he had ever learned. The other Academy pairs, initially confused by Marcus's apparent madness, began to understand what he was trying to do. Commander Varthek was the first to catch on. All units, he transmitted, follow the human's lead. Abandon standard tactical doctrine. Use random, unpredictable attacks. The effect cascaded through the remaining defenders. Altarian pilots abandoned their precise formations for wild, improvisational flights that followed no known patterns. Gorvanian warriors started using their strength in ways their culture had never contemplated. Silithian energy manipulators began channeling power through techniques that violated their most sacred traditions. The Devourer fleet, faced with an enemy that refused to behave according to any recognizable logic, began to collapse. Their central processing systems were overloading as they tried to adapt to tactics that could not be quantified or predicted. Marcus watched on his tactical display as enemy ships started to show signs of system failures. The machines were shutting down defensive systems to preserve processing power for their adaptation algorithms. But no amount of processing power could create order from pure chaos. The breakthrough came when Marcus realized that the Devourers had a central coordination node. All their ships were connected to a single processing center that distributed adaptation data across the fleet. If we can overload the central processor, the whole fleet will be vulnerable, he told Shadowmaw through their bond. But attacking the coordination ship directly would be suicide. It was the most heavily defended vessel in the fleet. Instead, Marcus had a different idea. He began deliberately feeding the Devourer network with contradictory data. He would perform an action that suggested one tactical approach, then immediately do something that suggested a completely different strategy. Each contradictory signal forced the central processor to work harder to find patterns that did not exist. Other pairs, understanding his plan, began doing the same thing. They created a storm of meaningless tactical data that overwhelmed the Devourer adaptation systems. The central coordination ship began to show signs of critical overload. Its hull plating flickered as internal systems struggled to process the flood of incomprehensible information. All units, concentrate fire on the coordination vessel, Commander Varthek ordered. Its defenses are failing. The combined attack from all remaining Academy pairs struck the coordination ship simultaneously. Without its defensive systems operating properly, the vessel was destroyed in seconds. The effect on the rest of the Devourer fleet was immediate and catastrophic. Ships that had been moving with perfect coordination suddenly became confused and unresponsive. Their formation collapsed as individual vessels lost connection to the central intelligence that had been guiding them. "This is impossible," came a transmission from one of the research station's scientists. "Devourer fleets do not just fall apart like this." But Marcus understood what had happened. The machines had been designed to learn and adapt, but they had never encountered an enemy that deliberately refused to make sense. Their greatest strength had become their greatest weakness. The remaining Devourer ships, cut off from their coordination network and unable to process the chaotic tactical environment, began a disorganized retreat. Some simply shut down completely, their systems overwhelmed by contradictory data. Within an hour, the space around Research Station Kepler-7 was clear of enemy vessels. The evacuation could proceed safely, and repair teams could begin restoring the damaged sections of the station. As Marcus and Shadowmaw returned to the Academy, he felt the War Beast's deep satisfaction through their bond. Shadowmaw had known from the beginning that this moment would come, when the human way of thinking would prove its worth. Commandant Zelix was waiting for them in the landing bay. Her crystal skin was showing patterns of amazement and respect. "How did you know that would work?" she asked. Marcus slid down from Shadowmaw's back, feeling exhausted but triumphant. "I did not know it would work. That was the point. The Devourers could predict any logical plan, but they could not predict something that was not a plan at all." The War Beast's scales shifted to deep gold as it nuzzled its human partner. Through their bond, Marcus felt the creature's pride and affection. Word of the victory spread quickly through the galactic communication networks. The species that had questioned human worthiness now found themselves reassessing everything they thought they knew about warfare and intelligence. Dr. Okafor found Marcus in the medical bay, where he was being treated for minor injuries from the battle. "You have changed how the galaxy thinks about humans," she told him, "and about the value of thinking differently." Marcus looked out through the medical bay window at Shadowmaw, who was resting in the beast quarters. The War Beast had chosen him not despite his human limitations, but because of his human strengths. The nickname Trouble Alpha had taken on a new meaning. Trouble, in the right hands and at the right time, might be exactly what the galaxy needed to face the challenges that lay ahead. Through his bond with Shadowmaw, Marcus felt the ancient creature's certainty that this was only the beginning. There would be other battles, other enemies who expected predictable responses. But now the galaxy knew that sometimes the best way to win was to refuse to fight like everyone expected. Sometimes victory came not from following the rules but from making up entirely new ones. Marcus smiled as he felt Shadowmaw's contentment. They had proven themselves worthy of each other, and they had shown the galaxy that being different was not a weakness. It was their greatest strength.